The first thing Natasha noticed when she opened her eyes was the harsh fluorescent lighting above her hospital bed. The second thing was the absence of her husband Benjamin, who should have been holding her hand, asking if she was okay. Instead, a nurse with tired eyes was checking monitors that beeped steadily beside her bed. "Where's my baby?" The words came out as a whisper, her throat feeling like sandpaper. Natasha's hand instinctively moved to her belly, where her 6-month bump should have been. The flatness under the hospital gown made her heart stop. "Mrs. Richardson, please try to stay calm," the nurse said, but her expression told Natasha everything she needed to know. "The doctor will be in shortly to explain everything." Natasha's mind raced back to the last thing she remembered. She had been at their home, preparing for what was supposed to be a small celebration for the baby shower that Benjamin had insisted on hosting. She remembered feeling dizzy after drinking the sparkling grape juice that Rachel, Benjamin's secretary, had brought over to help with preparations. Rachel had been so helpful lately, always volunteering to assist with party planning and errands. Too helpful, Natasha now realized. "How long have I been here?" Natasha asked, her voice stronger now despite the growing panic in her chest. 3 days, the nurse replied. "You were brought in unconscious. Your husband said he found you collapsed in your bedroom. 3 days. 3 days of her life gone, and Benjamin wasn't even here." Natasha tried to sit up, but her body felt weak, foreign. The hospital gown was loose around her middle, confirming her worst fears about the baby she had been carrying. Dr. Martinez entered the room with a clipboard and the kind of serious expression that medical professionals wear when delivering devastating news. He was a middle-aged man with graying temples and kind eyes that couldn't hide the gravity of what he was about to say. "Mrs. Richardson, I'm glad to see you're awake. How are you feeling?" "Tell me about my baby," Natasha said, cutting straight to the point. She had no patience for small talk when her world was clearly falling apart. Dr. Martinez pulled up a chair beside her bed. "I'm very sorry to tell you this, but you lost the baby. The toxicology report showed high levels of a substance in your system that caused severe complications. We did everything we could, but the damage was too extensive." "What substance?" Natasha's voice was eerily calm, though inside she felt like screaming. "A combination of medications that should never be mixed, especially not by someone who's pregnant. It appears someone deliberately gave these to you. The police have been notified and they'll want to speak with you when you're ready." Deliberately. Someone had done this on purpose. Someone had murdered her child and nearly killed her in the process. Natasha's mind immediately went to Rachel, with her perfectly timed visit and her helpful offering of drinks. Rachel, who had been working late with Benjamin more and more frequently. Rachel, who always seemed to know exactly what was happening in Natasha's personal life. "Where is my husband?" she asked, though she was beginning to suspect she already knew the answer. "He was here the first day, but he said he had urgent business matters to handle. He left his contact information with the nurse's station if you needed anything." Business matters. Their baby was dead, his wife was in the hospital, and Benjamin Richardson was handling business matters. The same Benjamin who had promised to love and protect her, who had cried when they found out they were having a baby girl, who had spent hours talking to her belly every night. A police detective knocked on the door frame and entered when Dr. Martinez waved him in. Detective Johnson was a tall black man with intelligent eyes and a notebook already in his hand. "Mrs. Richardson, I'm sorry to bother you while you're recovering, but I need to ask you some questions about what happened 3 days ago." Natasha nodded, her mind becoming clearer with each passing minute. If someone had done this deliberately, she was going to make sure they paid for it. No one takes away a mother's child and gets away with it. "Tell me about the last thing you remember," Detective Johnson said, pen poised over his notebook. "I was at home preparing for a small gathering we were having for the baby. My husband's secretary, Rachel Martinez, came over to help. She brought sparkling grape juice and insisted I try some because it was a special brand. After I drank it, I started feeling dizzy and nauseous. I thought it was just pregnancy symptoms, but then everything went black." Detective Johnson wrote quickly. "This secretary, Rachel Martinez, how well do you know her?" "She's worked for my husband for about 2 years. She's always been very attentive to our personal lives. Always asking about the baby, offering to help with things. I thought she was just being nice." "Has your husband mentioned working late more often recently? Any changes in his behavior?" The question hit Natasha like a physical blow because the answer was yes. Benjamin had been working late almost every night for the past 3 months. He'd been distant, distracted, always on his phone. She had attributed it to work stress and the pregnancy pressure, but now she was seeing it in a completely different light. "Yes," she said quietly. "He's been working very late. Always with important clients, he said. Always with meetings that couldn't be postponed. Detective Johnson made more notes. We'll need to interview your husband and Ms. Martinez. Do you know where we can find them? My husband should be at Richardson Capital Management downtown. Rachel works there too. Natasha paused, a terrible thought occurring to her. Detective, is it possible to check if Benjamin was really at the office during those late nights he claimed to be working? We can look into that. Is there something specific you're concerned about? Natasha looked at the detective, then at Dr. Martinez, and finally at her own hands folded over her now flat stomach. She had been naive, trusting, focused on preparing for their daughter's arrival. But lying in this hospital bed, having lost everything that mattered most to her, she was beginning to see the bigger picture. I think my husband might be having an affair with Rachel. And I think she drugged me to get rid of the baby. The words hung in the air like a confession, but not of guilt of awakening. Natasha Richardson, who had spent the last 3 years being the perfect wife to a millionaire businessman, was finally seeing the truth about the people she had trusted most. Detective Johnson leaned forward. That's a very serious accusation, Mrs. Richardson. If you're right, we're looking at attempted murder, murder of an unborn child, and conspiracy. Are you prepared for what that investigation might reveal? Natasha looked out the hospital window at the city skyline where her husband's office building stood tall among the others. Benjamin Richardson had built his fortune on being smart, calculating, and always staying one step ahead. But he had made one crucial mistake: he had underestimated the woman he married. Detective, she said, her voice gaining strength with each word, I want to know everything. I want the truth about what they did to my baby, and I want them to pay for it. All of it. As the detective left to begin his investigation and Dr. Martinez went to check on other patients, Natasha stared at the ceiling and began planning. She had lost her child, her trust, and her marriage in one devastating blow. But she was still alive, and she was still smart enough to make sure that Benjamin and Rachel got exactly what they deserved. The perfect life she thought she had was indeed shattered. But from those pieces she was going to build something much better, a life where she was in complete control, and where the people who had betrayed her would spend years regretting their choices. 2 days later, Natasha was discharged from the hospital with a folder full of medical reports and a heart full of determination. The house she returned to felt different now, not like the home she had been building for her growing family, but like a crime scene where someone had stolen her future. She walked through the rooms methodically, seeing everything with new eyes. The nursery she had painted pale yellow for their daughter was exactly as she had left it, except for one detail: the baby shower decorations were gone. Someone had cleaned up, erasing the evidence of what was supposed to be a celebration. Benjamin's car wasn't in the driveway, which didn't surprise her. He had texted earlier saying he would be working late again, handling the crisis at the office. The same excuse he'd been using for months. Natasha sat down at Benjamin's home office computer, something she had never done before because she had trusted and respected his privacy. That trust was dead now, buried alongside their daughter. She tried his usual password combinations: their wedding date, her birthday, his birthday. Nothing worked until she tried the date he had started his company. March 15, 2019. His email opened immediately, and what she found made her stomach turn. Months of correspondence with Rachel that had nothing to do with business. Messages that started professional and gradually became personal, then intimate, then explicit. She scrolled through emails about secret hotel meetings, plans to handle the Natasha situation, and discussions about starting a new life together once everything was resolved. One email from Rachel dated just 2 weeks ago made Natasha's blood run cold. Benjamin, we can't keep waiting forever. She's getting bigger every day and people are starting to ask questions about us working so late. I found a solution that will take care of both problems at once. Trust me on this. After the baby shower, everything will be different. We can finally be together without any complications. Benjamin's response was even worse. Are you sure this will work? I can't have any of this traced back to us. My reputation and business depend on staying clean. Don't worry, darling. I've researched everything carefully. It will look like pregnancy complications. Happens all the time. No one will suspect anything. Natasha printed every email, her hands shaking with rage rather than grief now. They had planned this. They had calculated the murder of her child as if it were just another business transaction. Rachel had researched how to kill an unborn baby and make it look accidental, and Benjamin had approved it. She found more evidence in Benjamin's hidden folders: photos of Rachel, credit card statements showing expensive jewelry purchases that Natasha had never received, and receipts for a downtown apartment that she had never heard about. Benjamin Richardson, the man she had married and trusted completely, had been living a double life for months. The sound of a car in the driveway made Natasha quickly close the computer and grab the printed emails. She had just enough time to hide them in her purse before Benjamin walked through the front door. "Natasha, honey, you're home." Benjamin's voice sounded forced, overly cheerful. He was carrying flowers, grocery store roses that looked like an afterthought. "I'm so sorry I couldn't be at the hospital more. This merger at work has been consuming everything." She looked at him for the first time in months. Benjamin Richardson was 42 years old, tall and lean with graying hair at the temples that made him look distinguished. He had kind eyes and a smile that had won her over when they met 4 years ago. But now she could see the guilt in those eyes, the way he couldn't quite meet her gaze. "How are you feeling?" he asked, setting the flowers on the kitchen counter. "Like someone murdered our baby," Natasha said quietly, watching his reaction. Benjamin's face went pale. "The doctors said it was complications from some kind of allergic reaction. These things happen sometimes with pregnancy," they said. "No, Benjamin. The doctors said someone deliberately gave me a combination of drugs that killed our daughter. The police are investigating it as attempted murder." She watched him process this information. His shock looked genuine, but she noticed how quickly he started calculating, his business mind already working on damage control. "That's terrible," he said. "Do they have any idea who would do such a thing?" Natasha almost laughed at his performance. "They're starting with the people who were at the house that day. Rachel brought drinks over to help with preparations, remember?" At the mention of Rachel's name, Benjamin's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. It was just a flicker, but Natasha caught it, the instinctive protective response of a man whose mistress had been mentioned as a murder suspect. "Rachel would never do something like that," he said quickly. "She's been nothing but helpful to our family." "Has she?" Natasha moved closer to him, studying his face. "Because I've been thinking about how helpful she's been. Always knowing our personal business, always volunteering to help with things that don't really concern her. Almost like she was keeping very close tabs on our lives." Benjamin turned away and opened the refrigerator, clearly looking for something to do with his hands. "You're upset, which is completely understandable. But you can't start suspecting people just because you're grieving." "I'm not just grieving, Benjamin. I'm angry. Someone killed our baby and I'm going to find out who. The police will handle that." "Yes, they will. Detective Johnson seems very thorough. He's planning to interview everyone who had access to our house recently, check phone records, email accounts, financial records. He said cases like this usually involve someone close to the victim." Benjamin dropped the bottle of water he had been holding. It rolled across the kitchen floor and neither of them moved to pick it up. "I should probably stay home with you for a few days," he said. "Help you through this difficult time. Actually, I think it would be better if you went to work. I need some time alone to process everything." Natasha picked up the water bottle and set it on the counter. "Besides, I'm sure Rachel needs you at the office. All those important meetings and late nights." The accusation hung between them, unspoken but clear. Benjamin's face went through several expressions: surprise, guilt, calculation, and finally resignation. "Natasha, if there's something you want to ask me, just ask." This was her moment. She could confront him directly, show him the emails, demand answers. But Natasha realized that would be giving him the advantage of knowing what she knew. Instead, she needed him to believe she was still the trusting, naive wife he had been betraying. "I don't have anything to ask you," she said calmly. "I know exactly who you are, Benjamin. The question is whether you know who I am." She walked past him toward the stairs, leaving him standing in the kitchen with his grocery store flowers and his guilty conscience. "I'm going to take a shower and rest. I assume you'll be working late again tonight?" "Probably," he said quietly. "Give Rachel my regards," Natasha said without turning around. As she climbed the stairs, she heard Benjamin on his phone, his voice urgent and hushed. She couldn't make out the words, but she didn't need to. He was warning Rachel that the investigation was getting serious, that Natasha might be suspicious. In their bedroom, Natasha sat on the bed that she would never share with Benjamin again and called Detective Johnson. "Detective, it's Natasha Richardson. I found some evidence you need to see." "What kind of evidence, Mrs. Richardson?" "Emails between my husband and Rachel planning what they called handling the Natasha situation. They've been having an affair and they planned this whole thing together." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mrs. Richardson, I need you to be very careful. If what you're saying is true, then both of them are extremely dangerous. Don't confront them, don't let them know what you've discovered. Don't worry, Detective. I'm done being the naive wife. From now on, I'm going to be very strategic about how I handle Benjamin and Rachel. What do you mean by that? Natasha looked at herself in the bedroom mirror. She was 34 years old, smart, educated, and until 3 days ago she had been completely dependent on Benjamin's wealth and status. But she was about to change that. I'm going to make sure they both get exactly what they deserve. And I'm going to enjoy watching it happen. After hanging up with the detective, Natasha opened her laptop and began researching. She looked up divorce lawyers, private investigators, and business consultants. If Benjamin thought he could destroy her life and walk away with his reputation intact, he was about to learn how wrong he was. The woman who had trusted blindly was gone. In her place was someone who would never be a victim again. The next morning, Natasha woke up with a clarity she hadn't felt in months. She had spent the night planning instead of grieving, strategizing instead of crying. Benjamin had already left for work, probably to coordinate with Rachel about how to handle the police investigation. She dressed carefully in a black dress that showed her respect for her lost daughter while making her look professional and strong. Today she was going to start gathering the evidence that would destroy both Benjamin and Rachel completely. Her first stop was Richardson Capital Management, the investment firm Benjamin had built over the past 8 years. Natasha had been there countless times for company parties and client events, always playing the role of the supportive wife who smiled and made small talk while Benjamin impressed potential investors. The receptionist, Patricia, greeted her with genuine sympathy. "Oh, Mrs. Richardson, I heard about what happened. I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you, Patricia. Is Benjamin in?" "I brought him lunch." Natasha held up a bag from Benjamin's favorite restaurant, playing the part of the caring wife. "He's in a meeting with Ms. Martinez, but I'm sure he'll want to see you. Let me buzz him." "Actually, don't bother them if it's important business. I'll just wait in his office." Natasha smiled and headed toward the elevator. "You know how he hates being interrupted during client meetings." Patricia nodded and returned to her work, not questioning why Benjamin's wife would have access to his office. That was the advantage of having been the trusted spouse. People still saw her as harmless. Benjamin's office was on the 15th floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Natasha had always admired this view, thinking about how hard Benjamin had worked to earn this success. Now she wondered how much of his business was built on lies and manipulation, just like their marriage. She could hear voices coming from the conference room next to Benjamin's office, his voice and Rachel's, speaking in hushed, urgent tones. Natasha quietly moved closer to the connecting door between the offices. "Can't keep panicking every time the police ask a question," Benjamin was saying. "We knew this might happen." "I'm not panicking," Rachel replied sharply. "But your wife isn't as stupid as we thought. She's asking the right questions, and Detective Johnson is taking this seriously. The toxicology report doesn't prove anything specific. You made sure of that." "Yes, but if they dig deeper into our relationship, if they find the apartment, if they check our phones and emails?" "They won't find anything. I've been careful." Natasha almost laughed out loud. Benjamin thought he had been careful, but he had left a digital trail that would convict them both. "What about the insurance policy?" Rachel asked. "When will that pay out?" Natasha's blood went cold. "Insurance policy? What insurance policy?" "The life insurance on Natasha and the baby should process within 90 days if the police close the case as accidental death. $2 million total. $2 million. They hadn't just planned to kill her baby, they had planned to kill her too. The only reason she was alive was because their plan had only partially worked. And if the police don't close it as accidental?" Rachel asked. "Then we stick to our story. Natasha had complications, we weren't involved, and we're both devastated by the loss. I play the grieving husband, you play the loyal employee who's supporting us through this difficult time. I'm tired of playing roles, Benjamin. I'm tired of pretending to care about your wife while I watch her live in the house that should be mine, wearing the jewelry I should have, carrying the baby that should have been ours. Rachel, we talked about this. You agreed to be patient. That was before she survived. The plan was supposed to take care of both problems. Now she's alive, asking questions, and the police are investigating. What if she finds out about us?" "She won't. Natasha trusts me completely. She's not smart enough to put the pieces together." Natasha gripped the door frame, her knuckles white with rage. Not smart enough. After 4 years of marriage, that's what Benjamin thought of her. "I saw her at the hospital," Rachel continued. "She looked different. Harder. What if losing the baby changed her? It doesn't matter what losing the baby did to her. What matters is that we control the narrative. As long as everyone believes I'm the devoted husband helping his wife through tragedy, we're safe." And after? When do we stop pretending? After the insurance pays out, after the police investigation is closed, after enough time has passed that no one will question our relationship. Maybe a year, maybe two. Then I'll divorce her for growing apart, after the loss of our child. You'll conveniently be there to help me heal. Everyone will think it's a beautiful love story. Beautiful love story. They thought murdering her and her baby was going to be their beautiful love story. Natasha quietly moved away from the door and sat at Benjamin's desk. She turned on his computer and began copying files onto a thumb drive she had brought. Financial records, client lists, email backups, tax documents, everything she could access. She found something even more damaging than the emails. Benjamin had been embezzling money from client accounts to fund his lifestyle and his affair with Rachel. The downtown apartment, the expensive gifts, the luxury vacations he claimed were business trips, all of it paid for with stolen money. Her phone buzzed with a text from Benjamin. Heard you stopped by the office. Sorry I missed you. In meetings all day. See you tonight. Natasha smiled grimly and texted back. No problem. Just wanted to surprise you. Love you. She finished copying the files and left the building, nodding pleasantly to Patricia on her way out. Let Benjamin and Rachel think they were safe. Let them think she was too devastated and too stupid to figure out their plan. From Benjamin's office building, Natasha drove to meet with Jennifer Walsh, the divorce lawyer she had researched the night before. Jennifer had a reputation for handling high-profile divorces and making sure her clients got everything they deserved. Mrs. Richardson, I'm very sorry for your loss, Jennifer said as they sat in her downtown office. I understand you're considering divorce? I'm considering complete destruction, Natasha replied calmly. My husband and his mistress murdered my baby and plan to murder me for insurance money. I want them to lose everything they care about. Jennifer leaned forward, her expression serious. Those are very serious allegations. Do you have proof? Natasha pulled out the thumb drive and the printed emails. I have proof of the affair, proof of embezzlement, and recordings of them discussing their plans. What I need from you is to make sure that when this is all over, Benjamin Richardson has nothing left but a prison cell. Jennifer spent the next hour reviewing the evidence, her expressions growing more shocked with each document. Mrs. Richardson, this is enough to destroy him completely. His business, his reputation, his freedom, everything. Good. That's exactly what I want. What about you? What do you want for your future? Natasha looked out the window at the city skyline. For 4 years she had defined herself as Benjamin's wife, living in his shadow, supporting his dreams. But that woman was gone now. I want to build my own life. My own business, my own success, my own future. And I want Benjamin and Rachel to watch me do it from behind bars. Jennifer smiled for the first time during their meeting. Mrs. Richardson, I think we're going to work very well together. That evening, Natasha made dinner and waited for Benjamin to come home. When he walked through the door at 9 o'clock, she was sitting at the kitchen table with candles lit and his favorite meal prepared. This is a nice surprise, he said, kissing her forehead like the loving husband he was pretending to be. I thought we should have dinner together. We haven't done that in a while. They ate and made small talk about his work, her recovery, and the police investigation. Benjamin played his role perfectly, concerned, supportive, appropriately grief-stricken about their loss. The detective called me today, he said as they were clearing the dishes. He wanted to ask some questions about the day of the baby shower. What did you tell him? The truth. That I was at work all day, that I came home and found you unconscious, that I called 911 immediately. Benjamin paused. He also asked about Rachel. What about her? Just routine questions. Where she was that day, how well we know her, that sort of thing. Benjamin studied Natasha's face. You don't really think Rachel could have done something like this, do you? Natasha looked directly into his eyes, the eyes of the man who had approved the murder of their child. Benjamin, I think people are capable of much more evil than we ever imagine. I think someone who seems trustworthy and caring could actually be a monster in disguise. Benjamin's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that looked like fear. You're probably right, he said quietly. After Benjamin went to bed, Natasha sat in the living room and made a list of everything she needed to accomplish. Destroy Benjamin's business through the embezzlement evidence. Make sure both he and Rachel were prosecuted for murder and attempted murder. Build her own life from the ground up. But most importantly, she needed to make sure that when this was all over, they would understand that underestimating Natasha Richardson had been the biggest mistake of their lives. 1 week after discovering the full extent of Benjamin and Rachel's betrayal, Natasha sat in Dr. Martinez's office for her follow-up appointment. The physical healing was progressing well, but the emotional transformation was complete. She was no longer the trusting wife who had walked into that hospital, she was someone entirely new. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Richardson?" Dr. Martinez asked, reviewing her chart. "Stronger every day," Natasha replied, and she meant it. "Doctor, I have a question about the drugs that were given to me. Would someone need medical knowledge to know that combination would be dangerous to a pregnancy?" Dr. Martinez looked up from his notes. "The specific combination found in your system would require some research, but it's not necessarily expert-level knowledge. Someone could find the information online if they were determined enough. And if someone wanted to make it look like natural pregnancy complications?" "Mrs. Richardson, these are questions for the police investigation. I hope you're not trying to conduct your own investigation. That could be dangerous." If only he knew what she had already discovered. "Of course not, doctor. I'm just trying to understand what happened to my baby." After leaving the medical office, Natasha drove to the bank where she and Benjamin held their joint accounts. It was time to start protecting her own interests. "Mrs. Richardson, how can I help you today?" asked Janet, their personal banker who had handled their finances for 3 years. "I'd like to open some individual accounts," Natasha said. "And I need to understand exactly what assets my husband and I own together." Janet printed out comprehensive statements showing their joint savings, checking, investment accounts, and the assets tied to Benjamin's business. The numbers were impressive. Benjamin had built significant wealth over their marriage. But as Natasha studied the records, she noticed irregularities in the business account transfers that aligned with what she had discovered about his embezzlement. "Janet, I also want to set up a separate investment account. Something substantial that I can manage independently." "Of course. How much were you thinking of investing?" $500,000 to start. Natasha had done the math. This was money from their joint savings that she had every legal right to access, and it would give her the foundation she needed to become financially independent. "That's a significant investment, Mrs. Richardson. Does Mr. Richardson know about this decision?" "My husband is dealing with some serious business issues right now. I'm taking more responsibility for managing our personal finances." It wasn't exactly a lie. Benjamin would indeed be dealing with serious business issues very soon. After setting up her new accounts and transferring the money, Natasha drove to a commercial real estate office in the business district. If she was going to build her own future, she needed to start with the foundation. "I'm looking for office space for a business consulting firm," she told the agent, Thomas Chin. "Something professional but not ostentatious. I want clients to feel like they're getting value, not paying for luxury." Thomas showed her several properties, but one stood out: a corner office on the 8th floor of a modern building, with large windows and an open layout perfect for a growing business. "This space was recently vacated by a law firm," Thomas explained. "It's already set up with conference rooms, individual offices, and a reception area. Very turnkey for someone starting a new venture." "What's the lease term?" "We can do anything from 1 year to 5 years, depending on your needs." "I'll take a 3-year lease," Natasha decided. "I want to be established but maintain flexibility for growth." That afternoon, she signed the lease under her maiden name, Natasha Parker Consulting. The name felt right, like she was reclaiming the identity she had set aside when she became Mrs. Richardson. Her phone rang as she was leaving the real estate office. Detective Johnson's name appeared on the screen. "Mrs. Richardson, we need to meet. I have some updates on the investigation." They arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown, away from any place where Benjamin or Rachel might see them together. Detective Johnson was waiting at a corner table when Natasha arrived, and his expression was serious. "We've made progress," he said without preamble. "The lab analysis confirmed that the drug combination in your system was specifically chosen to cause pregnancy complications. This wasn't random or accidental." "What does that mean for the case?" "It means we're officially treating this as attempted murder and murder of an unborn child. We've also obtained warrants for your husband's and Ms. Martinez's phone records, email accounts, and financial records." Natasha nodded calmly, though inside she felt a surge of satisfaction. "What can I do to help?" "Actually, Mrs. Richardson, I need to ask you to be careful. Based on what we're uncovering, both your husband and Ms. Martinez are extremely dangerous. If they realize you're cooperating with our investigation..." "Detective, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not the same woman I was 2 weeks ago. I know exactly how dangerous they are, and I'm prepared to protect myself." Detective Johnson studied her face. "You seem different than when we first met. Losing a child and discovering your husband planned to murder you tends to change a person," Natasha replied dryly. "Is there anything else you think we should know?" Any other evidence or information? Natasha considered telling him about the embezzlement evidence she had found, but decided to save that revelation for when it would have maximum impact. Just make sure you look closely at Benjamin's business finances. I think you'll find some interesting irregularities. After meeting with the detective, Natasha drove home to prepare for another performance as the grieving, unsuspecting wife. Benjamin's car was already in the driveway when she arrived, which was unusual for a weekday evening. She found him in his home office looking stressed and agitated. Papers were scattered across his desk, and his laptop was open to what looked like financial spreadsheets. "You're home early," she said from the doorway. Benjamin looked up, startled. "Oh, hi honey. Yeah, I had some things to catch up on at home. Everything okay? You look upset." "Just some complications with a client account. Nothing serious." He closed the laptop quickly. "How was your day? Did you go anywhere?" The question sounded casual, but Natasha caught the underlying tension. He was worried about what she might be doing, who she might be talking to. "I had my follow-up appointment with Dr. Martinez, then ran some errands. Nothing exciting." She moved into the office and sat in the chair across from his desk. "Benjamin, can I ask you something?" "Of course." But his posture had become defensive. "Do you think we'll ever be able to have another baby? After everything that happened?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment, his mask slipped, and she saw something that looked almost like guilt cross his features. I don't know, Natasha. Maybe we should focus on healing first, on getting through this tragedy together." "Together?" she repeated. "That's important to me, Benjamin. Knowing that we're facing this together, that there are no secrets between us." "Of course there are no secrets," he said, but he couldn't maintain eye contact. "Good. Because I don't think I could handle any more surprises right now. Finding out that someone close to us was involved in what happened to our baby, that would destroy me completely." Benjamin's hands gripped the edge of his desk. "Why would you say something like that?" "Just thinking about how much we trust the people around us. Like Rachel, for instance. She's been so much a part of our lives. If something like this investigation revealed that someone we trusted was involved." Natasha let the sentence hang in the air. "The investigation won't reveal anything like that," Benjamin said quickly. "Because nothing like that happened." Natasha smiled sadly. "You're right. I'm probably just being paranoid because I'm grieving. I should trust the people who love me." She stood up and kissed his forehead, playing the role of the loyal wife. "I'm going to make some tea. Would you like some?" "No, thank you. I have more work to finish." As she left the office, Natasha heard Benjamin immediately pick up his phone and dial. She lingered just outside the door to listen. "Rachel, we need to talk. Tonight. Something's wrong." "Perfect. Let them panic. Let them make mistakes while trying to cover their tracks." In the kitchen, Natasha made herself tea and opened her laptop. She had research to do and a business plan to write. While Benjamin and Rachel worried about the investigation closing in on them, she was going to build the foundation for her new life. She spent the evening researching business consulting, identifying potential clients, and creating a comprehensive plan for Natasha Parker Consulting. Her background in marketing and her connections through Benjamin's business network would give her a strong foundation, but she planned to succeed entirely on her own merits. At 10 o'clock, Benjamin announced he was going for a drive to clear his head. Natasha knew he was really going to meet Rachel, probably to coordinate their stories and plan their next moves. She didn't care. Every mistake they made, every panicked decision, every desperate attempt to cover their tracks would only make the eventual reckoning more complete. After Benjamin left, Natasha called Jennifer Walsh. "Mrs. Richardson, it's rather late. Is everything all right?" "Everything's perfect. I wanted to let you know that I'm moving forward with the divorce proceedings. I've established my own financial independence and business foundation. How quickly can we move?" "If you have the evidence you showed me, we can move very quickly. But are you sure you want to file now while the criminal investigation is ongoing?" "I want the divorce filed as soon as the criminal charges are announced. I want Benjamin to lose his wife, his business, his freedom, and his reputation all at the same time." Jennifer was quiet for a moment. "Mrs. Richardson, I have to ask, are you looking for justice or revenge? Is there a difference?" Natasha asked. "My baby is dead because of what they did. My marriage was a lie, my trust was violated, and they planned to murder me for insurance money. If ensuring they face the full consequences of their actions is revenge, then yes, I want revenge. In that case, I'll have the paperwork ready to file as soon as you give me the word." When Benjamin returned home 2 hours later, he looked even more agitated than when he had left. Natasha was reading in bed, playing the part of the innocent wife waiting for her husband. "How was your drive?" she asked. "Fine. Help me think." He undressed and got into bed beside her, but she could feel the tension radiating from his body. "Benjamin, are you worried about the police investigation?" "A little. I just want them to find whoever did this to you and our baby." Natasha turned to face him in the darkness. "They will. Detective Johnson seems very thorough. He said they're getting close to making arrests." Benjamin went completely still. "Arrests?" "He said that. He said whoever did this left more evidence than they realized. Apparently, people who commit crimes always think they're smarter than they are." Benjamin didn't respond, but Natasha could hear his breathing change. He was scared, and he should be. "Good night, honey," she said, settling back into her pillow. "Sweet dreams." But she knew Benjamin wouldn't be having sweet dreams anytime soon. And neither would Rachel. As Natasha drifted off to sleep, she thought about her daughter, the little girl who would never get to see the world, never get to call her mama, never get to grow up and live her own life. She had failed to protect her child when it mattered most, but she would not fail to get justice for her. Tomorrow she would continue building her new life while Benjamin and Rachel's world crumbled around them. And she was going to enjoy every moment of it. 3 weeks after losing her daughter, Natasha stood in her new office space, watching contractors install the sign that read, "Natasha Parker Consulting" on the glass door. The name felt powerful, like she was finally becoming the person she was meant to be. Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Johnson. "Major developments. Can you meet this afternoon?" Natasha replied that she would be there, then turned back to supervising the office setup. She had hired a small but efficient team. Carmen, an experienced office manager who had previously worked for a major consulting firm, and Michael, a recent business school graduate who was brilliant with data analysis and financial modeling. "Mrs. Parker," Carmen said, approaching with a tablet full of scheduling information. "I've confirmed your first 3 client consultations for next week. All are small business owners looking for growth strategies." "Perfect. And please call me Natasha. We're building something new here, something different from the stuffy corporate world." Carmen smiled. "I like that approach. It feels more genuine." Genuine. That was exactly what Natasha wanted her business to be, the complete opposite of everything false and manipulative in her previous life. Her phone rang with a call from Jennifer Walsh. "Natasha, I have news. The criminal investigation is moving faster than expected. Detective Johnson called my office to let us know they're planning arrests within the next few days." "Both Benjamin and Rachel?" "Yes. They have enough evidence for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and several financial crimes related to your husband's business practices." "Financial crimes?" "It seems your tip about irregularities in his business finances led them to discover extensive embezzlement. Your husband has been stealing from client accounts for over 2 years." Natasha felt a surge of satisfaction. The evidence she had found on Benjamin's computer had served its purpose. How much money are we talking about? Over $800,000. When this becomes public, it will destroy his reputation completely. No one will ever trust him with their money again. Good. What about the divorce proceedings? I'll file the papers the moment the arrests are made. By the time Benjamin gets out on bail, he'll discover that his wife has left him, taken half of all legitimate assets, and started her own successful business. After ending the call, Natasha walked around her new office, envisioning the future she was creating. This space would be where she built something meaningful, where she helped other people achieve their business goals while achieving her own independence. Michael approached with a laptop and a concerned expression. "Natasha, I've been researching Richardson Capital Management as you requested. There are some very concerning patterns in their public financial reports." "Show me." Michael pulled up spreadsheets and charts that clearly illustrated the embezzlement patterns she had discovered. "If I were a client of this firm, I would be very worried about the security of my investments." "How many clients does Richardson Capital manage?" "About 40 high net worth individuals and small businesses. Total assets under management around $15 million. And when Benjamin is arrested for stealing from these clients, the firm will collapse almost immediately. No one will leave their money with a company whose founder is facing criminal charges for theft." Natasha nodded. Benjamin had spent 8 years building Richardson Capital, establishing himself as a trustworthy investment advisor, creating his reputation and his fortune. In a matter of days, all of it would be gone. That afternoon, she met Detective Johnson at the same coffee shop where they had met before. He looked tired but satisfied. "Mrs. Richardson, we're ready to move. Tomorrow morning, we'll be arresting both your husband and Ms. Martinez. What are the charges? For your husband, conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to attempted murder, and embezzlement of client funds. For Ms. Martinez, attempted murder, murder of an unborn child, conspiracy to commit murder, and administering drugs without consent. Will they get bail? Given the serious nature of the charges and the flight risk, we'll be requesting high bail amounts. Your husband might be able to make bail eventually, but Ms. Martinez will likely remain in custody. Detective Johnson paused and studied Natasha's face. Mrs. Richardson, I have to ask, how are you handling all of this? Most people in your situation would be falling apart. Detective, I fell apart the day I lost my daughter. What you're seeing now is what I built from the pieces. And what exactly did you build? Natasha smiled. Someone who will never be a victim again. The next morning, Natasha was at her office early, working on client proposals when her phone started buzzing with calls from unknown numbers. News traveled fast in their social circle, and the arrest of prominent businessman Benjamin Richardson was apparently big news. She ignored the calls and focused on her work until Carmen knocked on her door. Natasha, there are reporters outside the building. They want to talk to you about your husband's arrest. Tell them I have no comment and that I'm focused on my business. Natasha looked out the window at the news vans gathering in the parking lot. Also, call building security and make sure they don't let anyone up to this floor without an appointment. Her phone rang with a call from an unknown number, but this time she decided to answer. Mrs. Richardson, this is Channel 7 News. We'd like to get your reaction to your husband's arrest for embezzlement and attempted murder. I have no comment, Natasha said calmly. But surely you have some reaction to discovering that your husband tried to have you killed? My only reaction is relief that justice is being served. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a business to run. She hung up and immediately called Jennifer Walsh. Jennifer, the media circus has started. Are you ready to file the divorce papers? Already done. The papers were filed an hour ago. Benjamin Richardson will be served while he's in jail. Perfect timing. Natasha, there's something else. The DA's office called. They want you to testify before the grand jury about what you discovered regarding your husband's activities. When? Next week. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing for weeks. I want to make sure they understand the full scope of what Benjamin and Rachel did. After dealing with the media attention and legal matters, Natasha returned to her work. She had 3 client consultations that afternoon, and she wasn't going to let Benjamin's drama interfere with building her new life. Her first client was Patricia Chin, who owned a small marketing agency and needed help expanding her client base. As they discussed Patricia's business goals, Natasha found herself energized by the process of helping someone else achieve success. You have excellent instincts, Natasha told her. What you need is a more systematic approach to client acquisition and a stronger online presence. Can you help me develop that? Absolutely. That's exactly what Natasha Parker Consulting specializes in, helping ambitious people build the businesses they deserve. By the end of the day, Natasha had signed 3 new clients and developed comprehensive plans for helping each of them achieve their goals. For the first time in weeks, she felt genuinely happy about something. Carmen stayed late to help manage the ongoing media calls and schedule appointments for the following week. You know, Carmen said as they were preparing to leave, I've worked for a lot of business owners, but I've never seen anyone handle a crisis like this. Most people would be hiding at home, crying. Crying doesn't solve problems, Natasha replied. Building something better does. As she drove home that evening, Natasha reflected on how much her life had changed in just a few weeks. She had gone from being Benjamin Richardson's dependent wife to being Natasha Parker, independent business owner. She had transformed from victim to survivor to someone who was actively creating her own success. The house felt different when she walked in, emptier but also cleaner somehow. The toxic presence of Benjamin's lies and manipulation was gone, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of knowing that justice was being served. She made herself dinner and sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, working on business plans and client strategies. This was her life now, focused, purposeful, and entirely under her own control. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Benjamin. They won't let me call from jail. I need you to post bail. Please help me. Natasha stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Benjamin Richardson was her past. Natasha Parker was her future. She spent the evening working on her business and planning her testimony for the grand jury. She was going to make sure that Benjamin and Rachel understood the full consequences of underestimating the woman they thought they could destroy. Tomorrow she would continue building the life she deserved while they sat in jail cells, contemplating the life they had thrown away for their selfish desires. And she was just getting started. 1 month after Benjamin's arrest, Natasha sat in the federal courthouse preparing to testify before the grand jury. She wore a navy blue suit that projected professionalism and authority, the image of a woman who commanded respect, not pity. The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Sarah Chin, met with her before the testimony to review the key points. Mrs. Richardson, the grand jury needs to understand not just what your husband and Ms. Martinez did, but the calculated nature of their crimes. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was premeditated murder for financial gain. I understand completely, Natasha replied. They planned every detail, from the affair to the embezzlement to the murder of my child. I have documentation of all of it. When she entered the grand jury room, Natasha felt a sense of power she had never experienced before. These 23 citizens would decide whether Benjamin and Rachel faced trial for their crimes, and she was going to make sure they understood the full scope of what had happened. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, 6 weeks ago, I was a trusting wife preparing for the birth of my first child. My husband Benjamin Richardson and his secretary Rachel Martinez murdered my daughter and tried to murder me for $2 million in insurance money. She methodically presented the evidence. The emails plotting her death, the financial records showing embezzlement, the toxicology reports proving deliberate poisoning, and the insurance policies taken out just months before the attack. They didn't just betray my trust, Natasha concluded. They betrayed every client who trusted Benjamin with their money, every employee who worked for his company, and every friend who believed they were good people. They are dangerous criminals who will hurt anyone to get what they want. The grand jury deliberated for less than 2 hours before returning with indictments on all charges. Benjamin and Rachel would face trial for attempted murder, murder of an unborn child, conspiracy, and multiple counts of embezzlement and fraud. Walking out of the courthouse, Natasha felt the weight of justice beginning to balance the scales. Her phone buzzed with a call from Detective Johnson. Mrs. Richardson, excellent testimony. The grand jury was clearly convinced. What happens next? Trial preparation. Given the strength of the evidence, the DA expects this to move quickly. Both defendants are looking at 25 to life if convicted on all charges. 25 to life. Benjamin and Rachel would spend the rest of their lives in prison, paying for what they had done to her daughter. From the courthouse, Natasha drove to her office, where Carmen was managing a steady stream of new client inquiries. Word about Natasha Parker Consulting was spreading, and business was growing rapidly. 3 more potential clients called this morning, Carmen reported. Including Harrison Industries. They want to hire us for a major expansion project. Harrison Industries was a $50 million manufacturing company. Landing them as a client would establish Natasha Parker Consulting as a serious player in the business world. Schedule the meeting for tomorrow, Natasha decided. And Carmen, start researching larger office space. We're going to need more room. That afternoon, Natasha met with Michael to review their growing client portfolio and financial projections. At our current growth rate, we'll need to hire 2 more consultants within 6 months, Michael reported. Our revenue for the first month exceeded our 6-month projections. What about the Richardson Capital situation? How is that affecting the market? The firm collapsed completely. All clients withdrew their funds within days of Benjamin's arrest. The estimated total losses from his embezzlement are now over $1 million. Natasha nodded. Benjamin's life work had been destroyed in a matter of days, just as he had tried to destroy hers. Her phone rang with a call from Jennifer Walsh. Natasha, we have developments on the divorce front. Benjamin's lawyer contacted me about a settlement offer. What kind of offer? He wants to keep the house and his remaining business assets in exchange for paying you ongoing alimony. Natasha almost laughed. He's in jail facing 25 to life, his business is destroyed, and he thinks he can negotiate keeping assets? His lawyer seems to think the criminal charges might not stick, or that he might get a reduced sentence. What did you tell them? I told them you weren't interested in alimony from a convicted felon. You want a clean break and your fair share of all legitimate assets. Perfect. Make sure Benjamin understands that I don't want anything from him except the satisfaction of watching him face the consequences of his choices. That evening, Natasha worked late at her office, preparing for the Harrison Industries presentation. As she researched their company and developed a comprehensive consulting proposal, she reflected on how much her life had changed. 6 weeks ago, she had been financially dependent on a man who was planning to murder her. Now she was building a successful business and helping other people achieve their goals. She had transformed from victim to victor in less than 2 months. Her phone buzzed with another text from Benjamin's number. "Natasha, please reconsider. We can work this out. I made mistakes, but we can rebuild." This time, instead of deleting the message, she decided to respond. "Benjamin, the only mistake you made was thinking I was weak enough to let you destroy me. Enjoy prison." She blocked his number and returned to work. The next morning, Natasha arrived at Harrison Industries wearing her best suit and carrying a presentation that would win them the biggest contract of her young company's existence. "Mrs. Parker," said James Harrison, the company's CEO, "we're impressed with your reputation and your team's background. What can you offer Harrison Industries?" "Mr. Harrison, I can offer you something unique, a consultant who understands that success isn't just about making money, it's about building something lasting and meaningful. I've learned the hard way what happens when people prioritize short-term gains over long-term integrity." She presented her comprehensive analysis of Harrison Industries' expansion opportunities, including detailed financial projections, risk assessments, and implementation timelines. The presentation was flawless, professional, and convincing. "Mrs. Parker," James Harrison said when she finished, "you've clearly done your homework. But I have to ask, with all the media attention around your personal situation, can we trust that you'll be focused on our business needs?" Natasha looked him directly in the eyes. "Mr. Harrison, my personal situation taught me that I can survive the worst betrayal imaginable and come out stronger. If I can rebuild my entire life in 6 weeks, I can certainly help you expand your business. The question isn't whether I'm focused, it's whether you're ready to work with someone who never gives up." Harrison smiled and extended his hand. "Welcome to the Harrison Industries team, Mrs. Parker." Walking out of Harrison Industries with a signed contract worth $200,000, Natasha felt a surge of pure triumph. She had not only survived Benjamin and Rachel's attempt to destroy her, she was thriving beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. Her phone rang with a call from ADA Sarah Chin. "Mrs. Richardson, I have news about the plea negotiations." "Plea negotiations?" "Both defendants' lawyers approached us about plea deals to avoid trial." "What kind of deals?" "Benjamin's lawyer offered a guilty plea to embezzlement in exchange for dropping the attempted murder charges. Rachel's lawyer wants to plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter instead of murder." Natasha felt a surge of anger. They were still trying to minimize the consequences of what they had done. "What was your response?" "I told them we're not interested in deals. We have enough evidence to convict on all charges, and that's exactly what we intend to do." "Good. I want them to face the full consequences of their choices. The trial is scheduled to begin in 8 weeks. Are you prepared for that?" "I've been preparing since the day I woke up in that hospital bed." That evening, Natasha celebrated her business victory with dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. As she sat alone at a table overlooking the city, she raised a glass of wine to toast her daughter's memory. "I'm sorry I couldn't protect you," she whispered. "But I promise I'll make sure they pay for what they did to you." Her phone buzzed with a text from Carmen. "Channel 7 wants to interview you about building a successful business after tragedy. Interested?" Natasha considered the request. She had been avoiding media attention, focusing on building her business rather than discussing her personal story. But maybe it was time to show the world what Benjamin and Rachel had failed to destroy. She texted back, "Schedule it for next week. It's time people knew that being underestimated can be the greatest advantage of all." As she drove home that night, Natasha thought about how Benjamin and Rachel were probably sitting in their jail cells, wondering how their perfect plan had gone so wrong. They had thought they were destroying a weak, dependent woman who couldn't survive without them. Instead, they had created their own worst enemy, someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. 2 months after the arrests, Natasha stood in her expanded office space, watching her team of 5 consultants work with clients throughout the elegant suite. Natasha Parker Consulting had become one of the city's fastest-growing business consultancy firms, with a waiting list of potential clients. Her phone buzzed with a call from ADA Sarah Chin. The trial was set to begin in 2 weeks, and final preparations were underway. "Natasha, we've had some interesting developments. Rachel Martinez's lawyer contacted us yesterday." "What did she want now?" "She wants to testify against your husband in exchange for a reduced sentence." Natasha felt a cold smile cross her lips. "She's willing to betray Benjamin to save herself?" "Exactly. She claims Benjamin was the mastermind, that he manipulated her into participating, and that she never intended for anyone to die. That's not what their email said. They were equal partners in planning my murder." I know, and we have the evidence to prove it. But her testimony could guarantee Benjamin gets convicted on all charges. What kind of reduced sentence is she asking for? 15 years instead of life. She'd be eligible for parole in 12. Natasha considered this carefully. Rachel Martinez would still spend over a decade in prison, and her testimony would ensure that Benjamin faced the full consequences of his crimes. Will her testimony help convict him? Absolutely. She knows details about the planning that only someone on the inside would know. Then let her testify. Let her destroy the man she claimed to love. It's poetic justice. After ending the call, Natasha walked through her office, checking on her team's progress with various client projects. The Harrison Industries expansion was proceeding ahead of schedule, and 3 other major companies had hired Natasha Parker Consulting for significant projects. Carmen approached with the day's schedule and a stack of media requests. The Channel 7 interview airs tonight, Carmen reminded her. And 5 more news outlets have requested interviews about your story. Which outlets? Business Weekly wants to feature you in their Entrepreneurs to Watch section. Forbes is interested in a piece about building a business after personal tragedy. The others are mostly local news. Schedule Business Weekly and Forbes. I want the business community to know that Natasha Parker Consulting is here to stay. That afternoon, Natasha met with her lawyer to discuss the final details of her divorce settlement. With Benjamin's assets frozen due to the criminal charges, the divorce had become more complicated than initially expected. The good news is that the house and all legitimate assets will be yours, Jennifer explained. Benjamin's criminal activity has voided any claim he might have had to contested property. What about his business assets? Richardson Capital Management is being liquidated to pay back the clients he stole from. There won't be anything left from that. And his personal accounts? After paying legal fees and restitution, there won't be much left. But you'll receive everything that remains. Natasha nodded. She didn't care about Benjamin's money. She was making more than enough on her own. What mattered was that he would have nothing left when he got out of prison in 25 years. That evening, Natasha watched herself on the Channel 7 News interview from her home office. The woman on screen looked confident, professional, and completely in control, nothing like the grieving victim people might have expected to see. After losing everything I thought mattered, her televised self was saying, I discovered that I had never really lost anything at all. I had just been living someone else's version of my life. Now I'm living my own version, and it's better than anything I could have imagined. The interviewer asked, do you have any message for other women who might be facing similar betrayals? Yes. Don't wait for someone else to save you, and don't waste time being the victim of someone else's choices. Take control of your life and build something better. The people who try to destroy you are actually giving you the greatest gift, the opportunity to discover how strong you really are. Her phone rang immediately after the interview ended. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but she answered anyway. Mrs. Richardson? This is Margaret Stone from Business Weekly. I just watched your interview, and I'd like to discuss a feature article about your business success. It's Miss Parker now, Natasha corrected. And I'd be happy to discuss that with you. Over the next week, Natasha gave interviews to several business publications, each one focusing on her transformation from dependent wife to successful entrepreneur. The story resonated with people, and her business phone rang constantly with new client inquiries. Michael presented her with updated financial projections that showed Natasha Parker Consulting on track to generate over $2 million in revenue during its first year. You've built something remarkable, he told her. Most consulting firms take 3 to 5 years to reach this level of success. Most consulting firms aren't built by someone with nothing left to lose, Natasha replied. The trial began on a crisp Monday morning in October. Natasha arrived at the courthouse wearing a black suit and carrying herself with the confidence of someone who had already won the most important victory. The media circus was significant. Benjamin Richardson's fall from respected businessman to accused murderer was big news, and Natasha's transformation into a successful entrepreneur added another layer to the story. Inside the courtroom, she saw Benjamin for the first time since his arrest. He looked thinner, older, and defeated. When their eyes met across the room, she saw no recognition of the woman he had tried to destroy. She was someone entirely different now. Rachel Martinez looked even worse. Jail had not been kind to her, and the stress of knowing she was about to testify against her former lover was clearly taking its toll. ADA Sarah Chen's opening statement was devastating. She methodically laid out the evidence of Benjamin and Rachel's conspiracy, the affair, the planning emails, the insurance policies, the deliberate drugging and the embezzlement that funded their lifestyle. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, she concluded, the defendants thought they had committed the perfect crime. They thought they could murder an innocent woman and her unborn child, collect $2 million in insurance money, and live happily ever after. They were wrong. Benjamin's lawyer tried to argue that his client was being railroaded by an angry ex-wife, but the evidence was overwhelming. The emails, the financial records, the toxicology reports, and Rachel's own testimony painted a clear picture of premeditated murder. When Rachel took the stand to testify against Benjamin, Natasha watched with fascination as the woman who had helped plan her murder tried to save her own skin. Benjamin told me that Natasha was standing in the way of our happiness, Rachel testified. He said we needed to find a permanent solution to the problem. What did you understand that to mean? The prosecutor asked. That we needed to get rid of her. He researched the drug combinations and told me exactly what to put in her drink. And what was supposed to happen after Mrs. Richardson died? We would wait a respectable amount of time, then Benjamin would begin dating me publicly. Eventually we would get married and use the insurance money to start fresh somewhere else. Natasha listened to Rachel describe their plan with clinical detachment. These people had plotted the murder of her and her child as casually as planning a vacation. When Benjamin's lawyer cross-examined Rachel, he tried to portray her as the mastermind who had manipulated his client. But Rachel was prepared for this attack. I have the emails, she said calmly. Benjamin wrote them himself. You can check the metadata, the IP addresses, everything. He was the one who came up with this plan. The trial lasted 2 weeks and the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning with guilty verdicts on all charges. Benjamin Richardson was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Rachel Martinez received 25 years with the possibility of parole after 15. As the sentences were read, Natasha felt a sense of completion that she hadn't experienced since the day she lost her daughter. Justice had been served, and the people who had destroyed her family were finally facing the consequences of their choices. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded her for comments. Mrs. Parker, how do you feel about the verdicts? I feel like justice has been served. My daughter can rest in peace knowing that the people who killed her are paying for their crimes. What's next for you? Natasha looked at the cameras with the confidence of someone who had rebuilt her life from nothing. What's next is continuing to build the life I deserve. Benjamin Richardson and Rachel Martinez thought they could destroy me, but they only made me stronger. Natasha Parker Consulting will continue to grow and succeed, and I'll continue to help other people achieve their dreams. Any final message for people following your story? Yes. Never let anyone else's choices define your life. No matter what someone does to you, you always have the power to choose who you become next. As she walked away from the courthouse, Natasha felt the weight of the past finally lifting from her shoulders. Benjamin and Rachel were going to prison for the rest of their lives, and she was free to build whatever future she wanted. The woman who had been Benjamin Richardson's dependent wife was gone forever. In her place was Natasha Parker, survivor, entrepreneur, and living proof that being underestimated could be the greatest advantage of all. 6 months after the trial, Natasha stood in the penthouse office of her expanded consulting firm, looking out over the city where she had rebuilt her life. Natasha Parker Consulting now occupied an entire floor of a prestigious downtown building, with 22 employees and clients across 3 states. Her assistant knocked on the door and entered with the morning's mail and messages. Miss Parker, you have a call from 60 Minutes. They want to do a segment on your story for their show on remarkable business comebacks. Schedule it for next month, Natasha decided. Also, what's the status on the Harrison Industries expansion project? Completed ahead of schedule and under budget. Mr. Harrison wants to discuss hiring us for 3 more projects. Natasha smiled. Success was the sweetest revenge of all. Her phone buzzed with a call from Detective Johnson, who had become something of a friend during the investigation and trial. Natasha, I thought you'd want to know Benjamin Richardson was attacked in prison yesterday. Attacked? Is he alive? Yes, but he's in the prison hospital. Apparently, word got around that he murdered a pregnant woman, and the other inmates didn't take kindly to that. Natasha felt no sympathy for Benjamin. Prison justice was harsh, but he had earned every bit of what he was experiencing. What about Rachel Martinez? She's in protective custody at the women's prison. Apparently, she's not handling incarceration well. Her lawyer filed an appeal, but it was denied. Good. They both deserve to spend the rest of their lives paying for what they did. That afternoon, Natasha met with her accountant to review the quarterly financial reports. The numbers were impressive. Natasha Parker Consulting had generated over $3 million in revenue during its first 18 months, and projections showed continued rapid growth. "You've built something remarkable," her accountant told her. "Most people who go through what you experienced would have fallen apart. Instead, you've created one of the most successful consulting firms in the region." "Success is the best revenge," Natasha replied. "Every dollar I earn, every client I help, every person I employ is proof that Benjamin and Rachel failed to destroy me." Her phone rang with a call from Jennifer Walsh, who had become not just her lawyer but a trusted advisor. "Natasha, I have news about Benjamin's prison situation. His lawyer contacted me." "What does he want now?" "Benjamin is asking for a divorce meeting. He wants to discuss unfinished business between you two." Natasha almost laughed. "There is no unfinished business. Our marriage ended the day he tried to murder me." I told his lawyer the same thing. "But I think you should consider meeting with him." "Why would I want to see Benjamin ever again?" "Because he's desperate, broken, and realizing that his life is effectively over. Sometimes seeing your enemy completely defeated provides closure that nothing else can." Natasha considered this. She had built an amazing new life, but there was still a part of her that wondered if Benjamin truly understood the magnitude of what he had lost. "Set up the meeting. I want to see what the great Benjamin Richardson has become." 2 weeks later, Natasha sat in the prison visiting room, waiting for the man who had tried to destroy her life. When Benjamin was brought in, she barely recognized him. The confident businessman was gone, replaced by a broken man in an orange jumpsuit with healing bruises on his face. He sat across from her at the metal table, and for several moments, neither of them spoke. "You look different," he finally said. "I am different. I'm the person I was always meant to be before I made the mistake of trusting you." Benjamin's hands were shaking. "Natasha, I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you terribly. But I never meant for things to go as far as they did. You researched how to murder a pregnant woman and make it look accidental. How much further could things have gone? I was confused, caught up in something I couldn't control. Rachel manipulated me." "Stop." Natasha's voice was ice cold. "Don't you dare try to blame Rachel for your choices. You were both equally guilty and you're both paying the price." Benjamin looked around the depressing visiting room, then back at her designer suit and confident demeanor. "You've done well for yourself. I've done better than well. I've built a multi-million-dollar business, I employ over 20 people, and I'm featured in business magazines as an example of entrepreneurial success. I'm everything you never thought I could be. I always knew you were smart." "No, you didn't. You told Rachel I wasn't smart enough to figure out what you were doing. You thought I was weak, dependent, controllable. That was your biggest mistake." Benjamin's shoulders sagged. "What do you want from me, Natasha? An apology?" "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." "I don't want an apology, Benjamin. I want you to understand that you didn't just lose your freedom when you planned to murder me. You lost the chance to be part of something extraordinary." "What do you mean?" "I mean that the woman you tried to kill has become more successful than you ever were. While you're rotting in here, I'm building something that will last for decades. You could have been part of that success if you had just been honest and faithful. Instead, you chose to throw everything away for a temporary affair with your secretary." Benjamin began to actually cry in front of her. "I lost everything," he whispered. "My business, my reputation, my freedom, my life. And for what? For a woman who testified against me to save herself. You lost all of that because you chose to lose it. Every decision you made, from starting the affair to planning my murder to stealing from your clients, was your choice. You weren't a victim of circumstances, you were the architect of your own destruction. Can you ever forgive me?" Natasha looked at this broken man who had once seemed so powerful and successful. She felt no pity, no lingering love, no desire for reconciliation. "Benjamin, I forgave you the day I decided to build a better life than the one you tried to take away from me. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll ever forget what you did, and it doesn't mean there won't be consequences. You're going to spend the rest of your life in prison, and I'm going to spend the rest of mine proving that you made the worst decision in the world when you underestimated me." She stood to leave. "Natasha, wait. Is there any chance, any possibility that we could work things out someday? When I get out?" Natasha turned back to face him one final time. "Benjamin, you're never getting out. You received life without parole, remember? And even if you did, the woman you married is dead. You killed her the day you decided to murder our baby. I'm someone completely different now, someone you never deserved and could never understand." As she walked away from the prison, Natasha felt a sense of complete closure. Seeing Benjamin broken and defeated had confirmed what she already knew: she had won completely. That evening she worked late in her office, preparing for a presentation to the mayor's Economic Development Committee. Natasha Parker Consulting had been selected to help plan the city's business growth strategy, a contract worth over $500,000. Her phone rang with a call from a number she didn't recognize. When she answered, she heard Rachel Martinez's voice. "Natasha, please don't hang up. I'm calling from prison." "What do you want, Rachel?" "I want to apologize. I want you to know that I'm sorry for what we did to you and your baby." "Are you sorry you did it or sorry you got caught?" There was a long pause. "I'm sorry I listened to Benjamin. I'm sorry I let him convince me that you were the problem. I know now that he was using both of us." "Benjamin didn't use you, Rachel. You were both equally responsible for planning my murder. Don't try to rewrite history now that you're facing the consequences. I know you hate me and you have every right to, but I want you to know that I think about your baby every day. I think about the life we took away from her and from you." "Good. I hope thinking about it keeps you awake every night for the next 25 years. Natasha, I know this is asking too much, but is there any way you could find it in your heart to forgive me?" Natasha looked out at the city lights, thinking about her daughter who would never see this view, never build her own dreams, never have the chance to forgive or be forgiven. "Rachel, I can forgive you the same way I forgave Benjamin, by building a life so successful and fulfilling that your attempt to destroy me becomes irrelevant. But I will never forget what you did, and I will never minimize the evil of your choices." "I understand. I hope you do. I hope you spend every day of your sentence thinking about the innocent life you took and the family you destroyed. I hope you never have a moment's peace." Natasha hung up and blocked Rachel's number. She was done with both of them forever. As she returned to work on her presentation, Natasha reflected on how completely the tables had turned. 6 months ago, Benjamin and Rachel had been planning her murder, confident in their superior intelligence and careful planning. Now they were both in prison, broken and desperate, while she was thriving beyond anything she had ever imagined possible. They had intended to destroy her, but instead, they had set her free to become the person she was always meant to be. Their betrayal had been the catalyst for her transformation from victim to victor. Her phone buzzed with a text from her newest client. "Ms. Parker, the board reviewed your proposal and we're extremely impressed. We'd like to move forward immediately. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking our company needs." Natasha smiled and returned to her work. While Benjamin and Rachel rotted in their cells, she would continue building the empire they had inadvertently helped create. Their attempt to murder her had failed. But their attempt to destroy her had succeeded in ways they never could have imagined. It had destroyed the weak, dependent woman she used to be and created someone infinitely stronger in her place. 1 year after the trial, Natasha stood before a packed auditorium at the State University, delivering the keynote address for their annual Women in Business conference. Her story had become legendary in entrepreneurial circles: the woman who transformed devastating betrayal into remarkable success. "The people who try to destroy you," she told the audience of aspiring businesswomen, "are actually giving you the greatest gift possible. They're forcing you to discover strength you never knew you had, to build something better than anything you could have imagined while you were comfortable." The applause was thunderous. After her speech, dozens of women approached her with their own stories of betrayal, setbacks, and comebacks. Natasha realized that her experience, as painful as it had been, was helping other people find their own strength. Back at her office that afternoon, Carmen presented her with a stack of new business proposals and interview requests. "Forbes wants to feature you on their cover for the Self-Made Women issue," Carmen reported. "And Harvard Business School wants you to speak at their graduation ceremony. Schedule both. Also, what's the status on the new office locations?" "The Dallas office opens next month, and we've identified locations in 3 more cities for expansion." Natasha Parker Consulting was becoming a national brand, with offices in multiple states and a reputation for transforming struggling businesses into success stories. Her phone rang with a call from Detective Johnson. "Natasha, I thought you'd want to know Benjamin Richardson was found dead in his cell this morning." The news hit her like a physical blow, though not from grief. "What happened?" "Suicide. He hanged himself with bedsheets. Left a note apologizing to you and asking for forgiveness." Natasha was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Benjamin had chosen to end his own life rather than face decades in prison for what he had done. "How do you feel about this?" Detective Johnson asked. "I feel like justice was served one way or another. Benjamin made his choice to destroy our family, and now he's made his final choice about how to handle the consequences. And Rachel Martinez? What about her? She's still alive, still in prison. Apparently, Benjamin's death has affected her pretty badly. Her lawyer says she's having some kind of breakdown. Natasha felt no sympathy for Rachel either. She has 15 more years to think about what she did to my daughter. Maybe Benjamin's death will help her understand the true weight of their crimes. After hanging up, Natasha sat in her office thinking about the man who had once been her husband. Benjamin Richardson had been intelligent, charismatic, successful, and ultimately too weak to face the consequences of his choices. His suicide was the final act of cowardice in a life that had become defined by selfish decisions. That evening, she met with a client for dinner at an upscale restaurant downtown. Marcus Williams owned a chain of restaurants and was looking to expand into new markets. "Miss Parker," he said over appetizers, "I've been following your story in the business press. What you've accomplished in less than 2 years is remarkable." "Thank you. What you've built with your restaurants is impressive too. Sometimes the best businesses come from people who understand adversity." As they discussed his expansion plans, Natasha found herself energized by the challenge of helping another entrepreneur achieve their dreams. This work helping people build something meaningful gave her a sense of purpose that she had never felt during her marriage to Benjamin. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Miss Parker, this is Dr. James Chin from the fertility clinic. We spoke 6 months ago about your options for having children in the future. I have some encouraging news about new treatments. Would you like to schedule a consultation?" Natasha stared at the message. 6 months earlier, she had quietly explored whether it would be possible for her to have children after the trauma her body had endured from Rachel's poisoning. The initial prognosis had been discouraging, but medical science was always advancing. She texted back, "Please schedule a consultation for next week." The possibility of motherhood, of creating new life after having life stolen from her, felt like the final piece of her transformation. Over the weekend, Natasha spent time at the cemetery where her daughter was buried. She had visited the small grave regularly, bringing flowers and updates about her life. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, kneeling beside the headstone that read, "Baby girl Richardson forever in our hearts. Mommy has some news. The bad man who hurt you is gone now. He can't hurt anyone ever again. And Rachel is going to stay in prison for a long time, thinking about what she did to you." She placed fresh flowers on the grave and continued talking to her daughter. "I'm building something beautiful, something that would make you proud. I'm helping other people achieve their dreams, and maybe someday I might be able to give you a little brother or sister. I know you would have been the most amazing big sister." The wind rustled through the trees, and Natasha felt a sense of peace that had eluded her since the day she lost her child. The following week, her consultation with Dr. Chen brought unexpected hope. "The good news is that the damage from the poisoning wasn't as extensive as we initially thought," he explained. "With some advanced treatments, there's a good chance you could carry a healthy pregnancy to term." "What kind of treatments?" "A combination of hormone therapy and careful monitoring. It would be considered a high-risk pregnancy, but many women in similar situations have successful outcomes." For the first time since losing her daughter, Natasha allowed herself to hope for the future she had thought was impossible. "Doctor, if I decided to move forward with this, what would the timeline look like?" "We could begin treatments within a few months. Of course, you'd need a partner, or you could consider using a sperm donor." Natasha had been so focused on building her business and getting justice for her daughter that she hadn't even considered dating or relationships. The idea of trusting someone new seemed impossible after what Benjamin had done. "I need time to think about this," she told Dr. Chin. That evening, she worked late in her office, thinking about the direction of her life. She had achieved everything she had set out to accomplish. Benjamin and Rachel were facing the consequences of their crimes. Her business was wildly successful, and she had proven that she was capable of far more than anyone had ever imagined. But for the first time in 2 years, she was thinking about what came next. Building a business had been her survival mechanism, her way of proving that she couldn't be destroyed. Now she was wondering what she wanted to build just for the joy of creating something beautiful. Her assistant knocked on her door. "Miss Parker, there's a gentleman here to see you. He says he's from the mayor's office." "Send him in." The man who entered was tall, well-dressed, and had kind eyes that reminded her of her father. He extended his hand with a warm smile. "Miss Parker, I'm David Thompson, the mayor's chief of staff. I've been wanting to meet you for months. What can I do for you, Mr. Thompson?" "Actually, I was hoping to discuss what we can do for each other. The mayor is putting together a task force to help other women who are starting businesses after major life challenges. Your story has inspired so many people, and we'd like you to lead the initiative." They talked for over an hour about the program's goals and structure. David was intelligent, passionate about helping people, and completely different from the manipulative businessman she had been married to. As he was leaving, David paused at the door. "Miss Parker, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but would you like to have dinner sometime?" "Not business, just dinner." Natasha looked at this man who was asking her on a date like a normal person, without ulterior motives or hidden agendas. For the first time in 2 years, she felt a flutter of possibility. "I'd like that," she said. After he left, Natasha sat in her office thinking about the unexpected turns her life was taking. Benjamin's death had closed one chapter completely, and new chapters were beginning to open. She picked up her phone and called Dr. Chen's office. "This is Natasha Parker. I'd like to schedule an appointment to begin fertility treatments. I'm ready to start building the family I deserve." As she made the appointment, Natasha realized that her transformation was complete. She had gone from victim to survivor to victor, and now she was ready to become something new, a woman who wasn't defined by what had been done to her, but by what she chose to create for herself. Benjamin and Rachel had tried to destroy her, but instead, they had set her free to build a life more beautiful than anything she had ever imagined possible. 5 years after the day she lost her daughter, Natasha stood in the nursery of her new home, hanging delicate decorations for the baby girl she was expecting in 2 months. The walls were painted a soft lavender, and sunlight streamed through windows that looked out over the garden where she planned to teach her daughter to grow flowers. David appeared in the doorway, carrying a cup of herbal tea and wearing the gentle smile that had won her heart 3 years earlier. "How are you feeling, Mrs. Thompson?" he asked, using the married name she had taken just 6 months ago. "Like the luckiest woman in the world," Natasha replied, accepting the tea and letting him wrap his arms around her from behind. Their marriage had been everything her first marriage wasn't, built on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine love. David knew her entire story and loved her not despite her strength but because of it. "The contractor called," David said. "The new office building will be ready for Natasha Parker Consulting's headquarters next month." The business had continued to grow exponentially. What had started as a single office with 3 employees was now a national consulting firm with over 100 employees across 12 cities. Natasha had been featured on magazine covers, spoken at conferences worldwide, and become a symbol of entrepreneurial resilience. But more importantly, she had helped hundreds of other businesses succeed and employed dozens of people who depended on her company for their livelihoods. The success felt meaningful because it was built on helping others achieve their dreams. Her phone rang with a call from Detective Johnson, who had become a close friend over the years. "Natasha, I have news about Rachel Martinez." "What about her?" "She died in prison yesterday. Apparently she's been sick for months and refused treatment. Her cellmate said she'd been talking about wanting to join Benjamin, about not being able to live with what they did." Natasha felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that the last person responsible for her daughter's death was gone, but also a strange sadness for the waste of 2 lives that could have been lived differently. "How do I feel about this?" she asked, more to herself than to Detective Johnson. "How do you feel about it?" "I feel like it's finally over. Both of them made their choices and both of them paid the ultimate price for those choices. I can close that chapter of my life completely now. And move forward with the new chapter?" Natasha looked around the nursery she was preparing for her daughter. "I've been moving forward for 5 years. This is just the next beautiful part of the journey." That afternoon, she sat in her office reviewing the quarterly reports for all 12 locations of Natasha Parker Consulting. The numbers were staggering. Her company was now generating over $15 million in annual revenue and had been recognized as one of the fastest growing consulting firms in the country. Carmen, who had stayed with her through the entire journey, knocked on the door with a stack of congratulatory messages. "The business journals are calling your story the greatest entrepreneurial comeback of the decade," Carmen reported. "And you have 17 requests for keynote speeches next month alone. Schedule the ones that align with our mission of helping other people build successful businesses," Natasha decided. "And Carmen, start researching locations for international expansion. I think it's time to take Natasha Parker Consulting global." That evening, she and David hosted a dinner party for their closest friends and business associates. As she looked around the table at the people who had supported her journey, Natasha reflected on how dramatically her life had changed. 5 years earlier, she had been a dependent wife with no identity separate from her husband. Now she was a successful CEO, a respected businesswoman, a happily married woman expecting her second child, and someone who used her platform to help other people achieve their goals. Jennifer Walsh, who had remained both her lawyer and close friend, raised her glass for a toast. To Natasha Thompson, who proved that being underestimated can be the greatest advantage of all, and that the best revenge is building a life so successful that your enemies become irrelevant. Everyone raised their glasses, but Natasha had something to add. 5 years ago, 2 people tried to destroy me because they thought I was weak and disposable. They thought they could murder my child and me, take my money, and live happily ever after. She paused, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. They were wrong about everything. They didn't destroy me, they set me free to become the person I was always meant to be. She looked around the table at the faces of people who truly cared about her. Benjamin and Rachel are both dead now, and I'm more alive than I've ever been. I have a business that helps people achieve their dreams, a husband who loves and respects me, and a daughter on the way who will grow up knowing that she comes from a line of strong women who never give up. David squeezed her hand. Tell them about the foundation. Oh yes, Natasha smiled. David and I are starting a foundation to help women who are rebuilding their lives after betrayal or abuse. We're going to provide business loans, mentorship, and support for women who want to create their own financial independence. The dinner party continued late into the evening, filled with laughter, business discussions, and plans for the future. As the last guests were leaving, Natasha stood on her front porch looking out at the life she had built. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Miss Parker, I watched your interview on 60 Minutes last night. 3 years ago, my husband left me with nothing after 20 years of marriage. I thought my life was over. But watching your story gave me hope that I could build something new. I started my own catering business and it's growing every month. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to become who you're meant to be. Messages like this arrived regularly now. Natasha's story had inspired thousands of women to take control of their lives and build their own success. Later that night, as she was getting ready for bed, Natasha caught sight of herself in the mirror. The woman looking back at her was confident, successful, and genuinely happy. She bore no resemblance to the naive, dependent wife who had trusted blindly and nearly paid with her life. David appeared behind her in the mirror, wrapping his arms around her. Any regrets? He asked softly. About what? About any of it. The marriage to Benjamin, what happened, the path that brought you here. Natasha considered the question seriously. If Benjamin had never betrayed her, if Rachel had never tried to murder her, if she had never lost her first daughter, she would never have discovered her own strength. She would never have built her business, never have helped hundreds of other people achieve success, never have met David, never have learned what real love looked like. No regrets, she said firmly. Everything that happened led me to this life, to this family, to this purpose. Benjamin and Rachel thought they were destroying me, but they were actually creating the person I was always supposed to become. She placed her hands on her pregnant belly, thinking about the daughter who would be born in 2 months. This little girl is going to grow up knowing that she's strong, capable, and able to overcome anything life throws at her. She's going to know that being underestimated is an advantage, and that the best response to people who try to tear you down is to build something so beautiful and successful that their attempts become irrelevant. As they prepared for bed, Natasha thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. She had started as a victim, become a survivor, transformed into a victor, and finally evolved into someone who used her victory to help others. Benjamin Richardson and Rachel Martinez were dead, their lives wasted on selfish desires and evil choices. But their attempt to destroy Natasha had ultimately created something beautiful, a successful business, a loving marriage, and a new life that would carry forward the lesson that strength comes from surviving the worst and building something better. Lying in bed next to her husband, feeling her daughter move inside her, surrounded by the success she had built with her own hands, Natasha finally felt complete peace. The woman who had been Benjamin Richardson's victim was gone forever. In her place was Natasha Thompson, entrepreneur, wife, mother-to-be, and living proof that being underestimated could be the greatest gift of all. Outside her window, the city lights twinkled like stars, illuminating the empire she had built from the ashes of betrayal. Tomorrow she would continue helping other people achieve their dreams while building an even brighter future for her growing family. The best revenge, she had learned, wasn't destroying your enemies, it was building a life so successful and fulfilling that their attempt to destroy you became just a footnote in your victory story. Benjamin and Rachel had given her the greatest gift possible when they tried to murder her. The opportunity to discover exactly how strong, capable, and extraordinary she really was. And for that, in a twisted way, she was almost grateful.